SAP gets big queries. NVIDIA is tapped by hyperscalers. We're going on a Quokka quest, flying down the slopes with Xsight Tahoe. Nexperia goes Dutch, and we're going to take a closer look at some of the hot news from NetApp INSIGHT 2025 in this episode of the Tech Field Day Rundown. Hello, everyone. You have safely arrived at the Ides of October. No, that's not really a thing. It's just October 15th, and we're very happy to have you here on the latest edition of the Tech Field Day Rundown. I am joined, of course, by my favorite co-host, Mr. Alastair Cooke. Al, hello again.
Hello and welcome. It is a lovely October here. At least it's lovely today. It's a bit stormy being fall here in New Zealand.
And we rather enjoy having an opportunity to come to you on, food-related holidays like National Shawarma Day and National Cheese Curds Day. And as my friends in Minnesota tell me, if they don't squeak, they're not authentic cheese curds. So keep that in mind. But we're going to squeak by with some great news because there's a lot of conferences going on this week, and there have been a lot of releases. And we're going to try to bring you as many of them as possible and maybe give you a little bit of perspective on them. In a surprise turn of somewhat semi-openness, SAP has linked Business Data Cloud to the Google BigQuery platform. This move will enable customers who have adopted the SAP Cloud platform to port data between their SAP and Google Cloud environments. More integrations are expected over time, and SAP is touting the move as an enabler for AI agents using a wider range of company data. Al, I hesitate to ask, but is there going to be an egress charge for sharing all of this data?
I've not looked at the pricing models, and funnily enough, that wasn't mentioned in the announcements that I could see. I got to think that data transfer costs, and so there'll be a cost somewhere in this. The product is called the BDC for Big Data Cloud Connect, and it allows this movement of data backwards and forwards between BigQuery and SAP's cloud platform. I got to think there's some cost to moving that data, so hopefully it's being done in a smart way. The idea here is to get this unified data foundation and break down silos and unlock a new class of AI agents. This is according to Thomas Kurian, the CEO at Google Cloud. And there's a whole lot of the buzzwords that we hear and have heard for a long time. But I think one of the things I see in this is that we absolutely have had a series of vendors wanting to lock your data, your corporate data, your personal data into their thing to make you very sticky, very retained on that thing. So it's interesting to see this ability to connect that data to other things, other places where you've also tended to get locked to. So I like this. I like the fact that I can potentially access my data that's stored in SAP from the BigQuery side. I'm hoping that's part of what we're allowing here, not just having your SAP environment getting access and Agentforce getting access to your BigQuery data. This is often useful where companies have done mergers and acquisitions and ended up with multiple SAP sort of silos on the SAP cloud and want to connect them together. You'd think that there'd be native tools inside the SAP platform, but some of the analyst response to this is, this is wonderful. We can connect together our multiple SAP environments through Google BigQuery. Doesn't seem a particularly sensible way to do it, particularly if there are those egress charges. We do hope that this will continue, that this openness to allowing access to data across different platforms will be useful for us, and that more integration between the different silos of data that we're building up in different software as a service platforms and application platforms will be broken down a little more, and we can get a more unified view of our data as an organization. Meta and Oracle are adopting NVIDIA's Spectrum-X Ethernet switches to power their AI data center networks, enabling faster and more efficient training of massive AI models. Meta will integrate the switches into its Facebook Open Switching system to improve deployment speed and AI training efficiency, while Oracle will build gigascale AI supercomputers using Spectrum-X platform and Vera Rubin architecture. Designed for trillion parameter models, Spectrum-X Ethernet connects millions of GPUs with high efficiency and low congestion, supporting hyperscale AI infrastructure and accelerating generative AI development across data centers. Wow, millions of GPUs and trillion parameter models? this is going to sell a lot of network ports.
Yeah, as long as the network ports you want to use are NVIDIA network ports. So, for those of you who don't know, SpectrumX is NVIDIA's answer to why not Ethernet. And it requires the use of DPUs that are built by NVIDIA and switches that are built by NVIDIA that run a lossless Ethernet architecture. This ain't Ethernet, not the way that you know it. Yes, it runs over Ethernet, but it is customized. It is a fabric. It is something that requires these GPUs to be able to do IO offload. And these switches, I don't think you're going to be able to plug anything into them. This to me is an example of where NVIDIA really is going after the market. They are targeting the hyperscalers. Meta introducing support for Spectrum X and FBOSS. I don't necessarily know that that's going to move the needle. I don't know how many people are running FBOSS already because most of them have decided that Sonic is the operating system of choice that they would prefer to use. I guess that Oracle's wanting to displace some of their existing deployments of networking. I actually wonder how much Arista networking this is going to eat up because they were kind of the incumbent in those hyperscale data centers. But it gives NVIDIA a little bit of stickiness with their solution, right? Because what you've offered for a very long time is this very vertically integrated stack. You buy the GPUs from NVIDIA, you buy the hardware from NVIDIA. Now, why not just buy the networking from NVIDIA? And as long as you can get the data into the modeling system, it will run at flat out speeds across the backbone. Where I wonder if this is going to have an impact is outside of those hyperscale data centers where you're dealing with very brownfield architectures that have a large deployment of Cisco, HPE, Nokia, very traditionally sticky enterprise vendors. Is NVIDIA's play going to be, well, if you're already going to buy the hardware from us to do all this AI development work, you might as well use our network. I remember when that was IBM's model with the Blade Center, right? You could buy the IBM Blade Center and you buy our switches and it ships out in one rack and you make it all work, except when you're trying to interface it with your existing network. And just so you know, that network is one that is referred to by the Ultra Ethernet Consortium as Network 1. That's the user-facing network. That's how the data gets in there. A little bit of Network 2 as well. So I'm a little bit curious to see how this ultimately comes across. Is this a sea change for people in the enterprise industry, or is this an opportunity for NVIDIA to sell to a group of customers that have the pocketbook to buy that technology from them? Ubuntu 25.10 is bringing a fresh coat of paint with an upgrade to GNOME 49, HDR brightness controls, new accessibility features, and modern apps like the Loop image viewers and the PT Ptixis terminal? Yeah, we'll go with that. It's built on the Linux kernel 6.17. It offers better security with TPM-backed encryption, Intel TDX support, and ARM virtualization. If you're one of those fancy development type people, you're going to get the latest tool chains for Python, Rust, Go, and hopefully Visual Basic. Well, you can probably feel safer because the Rust-based versions of sudo and core utils are included. All official Ubuntu flavors are updated, and 9 months of support are ahead of you with the next LTS release. And this 25.10 release, of course, is known as the Quokka release because we're still doing the thing where we're naming it after animals. Al, other than me pronouncing a whole bunch of things in that read-in wrong, what is your take on Ubuntu 25.10?
Well, it is an interim release. It's important to recognize this isn't one of the long-term support releases. We're looking for early 2026 for the next LTS release. So don't expect this to be what you run your system on for the next 20 years. There's some interesting elements in there of the full disk encryption using the TPM. That's experimental. Yeah, that definitely doesn't seem like a long-term support kind of behavior to me. Uh, these relatively short support, not non-long-term support releases, the interim releases are a good place to test out new features, prove how they work, identify what's wrong with them so you can fix it before you hit the LTS releases. So yes, these things should be out in front of customers. Customers should be using this to learn a little more about where the future is. Uh, I don't think we've quite got Visual Basic for applications in here, although there is a .NET experience on Ubuntu, so you absolutely can build VB.NET, just not good old-fashioned VB on this. Uh, movements towards Rust-based implementations of some of the core tools, as you say, core utils and sudo. That's a good thing. Nice newer versions. These are things that often haven't been updated for a very long time, so it's good to see a pathway to more secure, more modern applications. Moving away from that idea that everything's resting, everything we build is resting on some little open source tool where there is one maintainer for that open source tool, and when they go on holiday, no updates will possibly occur. If they get hit by a bus on that holiday, we're in a lot of trouble. Other things we've got in here, some nice support for further virtualization, including nested virtualization. Something close to my own heart is the ability to run virtual machines that are actual virtualization hosts themselves, so I don't need as many physical servers to mess around with virtualization. Some nice pieces also on nested virtualization on ARM, because ARM development for edge platforms, particularly IoT and edge platforms, really useful to have a virtualization again as a way of testing lots and lots of uh, potentially virtual devices as you're going through testing. Nice release, lots of functionality in it. Not for your mainstream primary production loads. Wait for the LTS release before you upgrade those. Xsight Labs and Interface Masters have launched the Tahoe 3828 EXA, a one rack unit smart switch that delivers top performance and efficiency for AI, cloud, and edge applications. With 28 times 400 gig Ethernet ports and 128 ARM cores, that seems like a pretty big edge. I think they're meaning the near edge that looks like a data center. It offers 4 times the performance per rack unit at half of the power of competitors, and fully programmable and Linux compatible. The EXA support, or EXA, supports AI inference, cloud analytics, distributed firewalls, and hyperscale networking. Should start shipping to customers in Q1 2026, who should be quaking in their boots as this fast little unit starts shipping.
I think that anybody who was trying to break into that edge inferencing market should really be concerned about this, because 28 400 gig Ethernet ports effectively, and when I remember Al's right, when we talk about the edge, we're not talking about like my home network here. We're talking about the edge being kind of the CPE side of things, and this is maybe a little bit more up the chain than that. When you look at the release page for this, they're targeting cloud gateways, carrier NAT, and load balancing, packet brokers, 5.5 and 6G terrestrial and satellite base stations. Like they're targeting the edge being the edge of the provider's equipment. Now, why would they do that? Because they realize that the amount of data that's being pumped out of that edge and being collected for munging through AI platforms is increasing dramatically. And so they're hoping that they can essentially catch lightning in a bottle with a small, fast, relatively inexpensive appliance style switch that they can deploy down there. Again, 20, was it 24? 28 400 gig Ethernet ports. It also comes with 128 ARM cores. Why are you putting ARM cores in a switch, kiddos? Well, because a lot of the kind of oversight applications that we want to do all this edge data processing live on the switch now. It's fully Linux compatible. That means that you can run just about anything you want on it. And a lot of these people are going to be deploying these out there to do the kinds of aggregation that we need at the edge to be able to feed these things back into LLMs. So I think that Xsight's got something here. Now, the question for me is this going to be targeted at the provider market? Because it kind of sounds from the release like that's what they're wanting to do. Or are they going to try to scale up to the hyperscale market? I think where you're going to run into problems is, as we mentioned in a previous story, kind of fighting against the incumbents who would rather keep you out of there. And that full stack offering, that whole rack unit offering versus just a simple one use switch. I think Xsight's going to make some inroads with this device. I think that they're going to win over some of the folks who are a little less beholden to the label on the unit and a little more performance, a little more concerned about the spec sheets and performance on the unit. And that should be able to at least kind of start a conversation. And I hope that that gives Xsight the breathing room that they need to be able to bring more of these to the market and kind of increase their presence in a variety of different areas. The Dutch government has seized control of Chinese owned chipmaker Nexperia, citing risks of sensitive technology transfer to the parent company WingTech. Under powers available from the Availability of Goods Act, The Hague suspended WingTech CEO from Nexperia's board and placed company shares under Dutch management, although production does continue. WingTech, which bought Nexperia for $3.63 billion back in 2018, called the move excessive interference driven by geopolitical bias. Nexperia, a major producer of semiconductors for cars, electronics, and AI applications, is now under Dutch oversight to protect critical technological knowledge that is important to Dutch and European economic security. Al, this is the first time that we've seen a Western government step in to basically take hold of a company from a Chinese owned oversight committee. Is this going to be a situation where it's going to be kind of a tit for tat thing? Or are we thinking that maybe the Dutch are going to try to head off that by effectively keeping the country in country?
It's hard to see how it turns up as being a tit for tat. I mean, I'm not sure that there are many Dutch-owned companies in China that could be seized. Typically, it's very hard for a foreign country's owned entity to set up business in China, and it typically ends up being entirely Chinese-owned part of the company. S- uh, but it is pretty significant that this Dutch-based company that was sold to a Chinese owner is now being essentially uh, controlled by Dutch appointees, Dutch government appointees. The ownership hasn't changed. It's not that it's been nationalised or seized. It's just that control has shifted, and it seems to be driven by the Dutch government feeling that WingTech were not allowing uh, Nexperia to follow proper Dutch legal processes and governance. And that's what they're calling it from the Dutch government side, is basically saying the governance of this company hasn't been right, and we have to do something to protect the um, the intellectual property that is valuable and keep that in our control. You could see a situation where the intellectual property that is part of this silicon foundry would end up in China, and then the foundry in the Netherlands gets shut down. And that's probably not something that the Dutch government wants, both from the point of view of employment and revenue, but also supply of vital parts for car production and electrical appliance production. So I can see some perspectives on this. Whether there's a real risk, it's a little harder to see. Washington, the US government did nominate WingTech as being on the entity list for aiding China's government to acquire sensitive semiconductor manufacturing capabilities. So there is some kind of feeling that maybe this was a push from the US, although the Dutch government is saying no, it had nothing to do with the US. We made this decision entirely independently. And the United States had put the WingTech on this entity list in December 2024, so there's a bit of separation between the two. Naturally, WingTech says this is a ridiculous overreach, and there's no reason to take this control. And we were doing a great job of complying with all European, Dutch, and Chinese law, and this is a terrible thing. Yeah, well, here's the reality. The Dutch Parliament, Dutch government decided that they didn't really want that much control of a Dutch company from China at this time. How long it goes on for will be interesting to see. Whether there are some pushback from the company, particularly from WingTech towards Europe, will be interesting to see over time. Raghuram, the former CEO of VMware, has joined Andreessen Horowitz as a general partner. He brings 20 years of infrastructure expertise and executive experience to the venture firm. Raghuram left VMware following its $69 billion acquisition by Broadcom in 2023. He previously worked at Netscape under Ben Horowitz. This addition strengthens Andreessen Horowitz's infrastructure and growth teams and helps the leadership gap that's been left by Scott Kapoor leaving, and the positions the firm to expand its influence in technology investments. We're going to see a new round of innovative startups in infrastructure. Is it time for that again?
Oh, absolutely. Anything you can slap AI on, they're going to be putting their money into it because they're hoping to hit that slot machine handle one more time. I think the value of what Raghu brings to this market is that he is able to at least sniff out some of the pretenders to the throne, so to speak. When you are kind of instilled in the VC world, in the equity firm world, you tend to hear the same pitches over and over again, right? Like I'm not going to lie, everything you saw in Silicon Valley is 100% accurate. Like that's what makes it funny. Is that's just how people talk. And this is one of the values that we bring to Tech Field Day, right? Is once we bring somebody into the room who actually knows what you're talking about and can go, wait a minute, it doesn't work like that, like that's not a thing that you can do. It tends to kind of cause a house of cards to collapse in on itself. Now, if they really do know what they're talking about, that's not a huge deal. But you have to have somebody in the room with the experience to know that. And I think Raghu has that because Raghu took over after Pat Gelsinger departed for Intel and basically guided VMware into that landing at Broadcom. Now, of course, after that, Hawk 10 does not need anybody to help Hawk 10. And so he wanted to go somewhere else. And I had seen all the way back in July that there were kind of these rumblings that maybe Raghu was going to go to Andreessen Horowitz because he used to work with Ben back in the Netscape days. And isn't it funny that we say back in the Netscape days, like it was from, like the 1950s? Yeah, it's not. That was from the late 90s, kiddos. That's how old Navigator is. But you think about that and you think about that next round of funding because there's a crap load of money out there right now that's trying to get into that pie. But we all know that that money won't last forever. And there's potential for that market to contract a little bit. I'm not going to say the B word because people don't like the B word. But if the possibility exists that that market will contract, then A16Z needs to get as much money out of it as they can before things pop. So having someone in the room who will know whether or not that unicorn that just came in has the ability to make a go of it or to be acquired versus someone who really is just blowing smoke is going to be super valuable. And I'm sure that, he's going to have his great portfolio and he's going to be able to make a lot of money for not only himself, but for them. And it should be good. But it's good to see Raghu had a soft landing after, everything that's been going on at VMware. It's time for a closer look at something going on in Vegas this week because among all the other conferences, it's NetApp INSIGHT, and we have the latest news coming out of NetApp INSIGHT just for you. We are going to be doing Tech Field Day Extra at NetApp Insight this Thursday, so you're definitely going to want to tune in for that at techfieldday.com. But we wanted to give you a sneak peek at some of the latest offerings from the storage titan because the news is already starting to come out ahead of NetApp Insight. The first one I want to start off with is NetApp's new AI data engine, which preprocesses ONTAP data for use with LLMs and agents. It includes features for metadata management, data synchronization, data governance, and data curation, data. It also includes a built-in vector database. Al, do you think NetApp having an AI data engine is going to be a huge win?
Well, I think for existing customers that are dyed in the wool, everything on tap, this is absolutely awesome. Lots of customers have liked ONTAP for a long time and have stored huge amounts of particularly unstructured data on there that is great to feed into their AI system. So, yeah, I think this is a really useful element of an approach. Uh, be interesting to see to what extent it delivers AI as a service on top of it, because we're increasingly seeing a desire for AI as a service rather than a series of pieces you can assemble together into your own AI solution in your own time with your own experts. So I'll be looking for a little more detail on what's being delivered there.
One of the values of having the AI data engine actually nearest the storage is that capability to do that pre-processing, right? That may not sound like a big deal to you, but do you know what it sounds like a big deal to? All of those ingress costs, because that's one of the things that you're going to be fighting against. And I know we brought up the egress ingress thing before, but that's one of the ways that cloud providers are finding, we're not going to charge you for your compute any more than we already did, but boy, you want to move data around? I don't know about that. So having something that can do this pre-processing that can kind of categorize and do all this important stuff, or, look at the data governance aspect of it, not let things off the box that shouldn't be off the box. You know who likes that? Your auditors, because your auditors really don't want that data even getting anywhere close to an LLM. Because think that an auditor is going to be like, yeah, yeah, that little line of code in there that keeps the people from jailbreaking the LLM. Yeah, that's enough. That's enough security. We won't worry about that. I think though that you're absolutely right, Al. There's possibility here, and I can't wait to see what they come up with.
The other announcement I saw in there was the AFX arrays, the disaggregated storage array, having the separation of essentially the front end that satisfies the I/O from the scale out element that does the actual storage. And this is an architecture that we've seen before. We've seen it in other storage platforms that are particularly good for scale out workloads. So workloads like AI, where there are a huge number of different units, different in this case GPUs, that will be wanting to access bits of data to pull in for training, for fine tuning. So, this architecture of separating out the capacity storage pool from the front end compute performance that delivers the I/O is awesome. Seeing it scale to 128 storage controllers and 52 storage enclosures with an exabyte of effective capacity. Exabyte of effective capacity. How much compression and DG are they expecting? Definitely seeing the ability to have data compute nodes to generate more of that metadata and also that information that we might want to use in our AI systems over time. I think this is a nice thing to be seeing. And then, of course, it inherits a whole lot of ONTAP capabilities. And so it's not like it's a build from the ground up, something completely new with a whole new set of interfaces. I like that, particularly for those again dyed in the wool fans of ONTAP, and those exist both inside NetApp as well as in customers.
Here's my take on it, Al. There are a lot of people out there who love their on tap boxes, right? You know what they don't like? Ripping them out. Like wholesale. Like to me, it's like when you have to buy something because a little piece of it broke, right? Like, oh, I don't understand why I have to go out and spend all this money. And what NetApp is basically saying is you don't. Like if the controller starts lagging because it can't swap the data fast enough, go buy a new controller. The AFX is basically a modular system. Do you need to scale it out? Okay, cool. We got all these new DX50 data compute nodes that we can do to kind of front end your NVMe storage arrays. I think that what they're hoping is that people who are trying to scale out for let's face it, AI operations, because this is kind of an AI infrastructure company at this point. They're hoping that what's going to happen is that these people are going to scale these systems as fast as they can and as wide as they can, and then they're sticky. Because one of the things, if you want to go back in the annals of history to the Catalyst 6500 from Cisco, one of the smartest things that they ever did with that box was making it so easy to rip and replace the pieces out of it. Um, it's really the switch of Theseus at this point. If you bought one on day one, the chassis is still as functional as it ever was, but the difference between when it was released and basically when it was EOL, because it now is EOL, is night and day difference with supervisor engines and line cards and all kinds of other stuff. If NetApp can do that with AFX, I mean, basically you got a persistent, and I'm not saying persistent in the traditional sense of stuff stays where it's at, but persistent in the it's hard to get this thing out of here kind of mentality. One of the greatest things I ever heard from a friend of mine was this is the kind of weld it to a rack storage array that NetApp really wants to get in front of people.
Yeah, I think one of the elements is you just take away that decision point where they have to rip and replace everything, make it very easy to do what we would call the grandfather's axe, replace the head twice and the handle 7 times, but it's my grandfather's axe. Um, Absolutely, that kind of scale out and pour all of your data in here, but keep the identity of the cluster permanently, even though the elements that make up the cluster may change over time. Fits really nicely with some of the financial models as well of the expand or grow as you grow. As you place more data in here, you just expand out that storage pool. You don't have to acquire all of your capacity up front. As maybe you have some divestment, some sale of parts of your business, maybe you'll be able to scale back down again. Scale down, of course, is always more challenging on storage than scaling out.
Well, the good news is that all of the stuff that's coming out of NetApp Insight is going to be featured on Tech Field Day Extra because Steven is out in Vegas right now. I'm sure he's enjoying the weather. and we are going to be hearing from him. If you head over to techfieldday.com, you can catch all of the videos. I believe they're going to be posted on Thursday, which is the 16th. You can watch all of the fun stuff that's happening there live, but make sure that you pace yourself because coming up next week, there's more great stuff coming from Alastair.
Yes, get some good sleep over the weekend. Take a bit of a relax, particularly enjoy the increasing warmth in parts of the United States because next week on October 22nd and 23rd, I will be in San Francisco hosting Cloud Field Day. We'll have a bunch of really interesting companies. We've got Oxide Computing Bank as one of our headlines, but also Pure Storage and Fortinet and HPE will all be there along with my delegate panel. I have an awesome group of people coming in to join me for those 2 days. So watch out for us on all of your favorite locations across the Tech Field Day and the wider Futurum group as well. The following week, Stephen gets another dose of West Coast where he is out for AI Field Day. October 29th and 30th, he, of course, will have a wonderful time with some people who are doing awesome and amazing things using that AI stuff to actually deliver some value. Miraculous. Take a little break, and then, Tom, it's your turn to travel.
It is. How's that AI goodness going to get to the AI inferencing clusters? That's right. It's coming over the network. And we are going to be talking to a bunch of great companies at Networking Field Day, including Nokia, who is really starting to jump in with both feet on the AI front. And you're going to get to hear all about the cool stuff they're working on. We have a lot of other great companies that are going to be joining us. If you head over to techfieldday.com, you can check out the lineup and see the schedule. We're going to be finalizing that hopefully in the next week or so. And we can't wait to see you there because we've got some real smart delegates who are ready to just enjoy all of the goodness that comes with watching the bits flying back and forth as fast as humanly possible, or in this case, inhumanly possible. But we want to thank all of you humans for watching the Tech Field Day Rundown. You can always catch all of our new episodes every Wednesday as a YouTube video or your favorite podcast application of choice. I happen to be a fan of Overcast, but whatever you want to use, that's up to you. The Rundown is being streamed on TechStrong TV as well. You can catch us on other TechStrong and Futurum Group programs, including my new podcast, the Security Boulevard podcast, which comes out on Tuesdays. I'm recording that with a rotating group of characters, and you're not going to want to miss that. We hope that you'll be back next Wednesday to talk about all the IT news that was in the week before. And Al will be out next week, but don't worry, I'm going to have a fun co-host, and it will not be AI generated, no matter what the Sora watermark tells you. Until then, for myself, Tom Hollingsworth, for Alastair Cooke, for Corey, our amazing producer, and all of the other people that make this stuff possible, thank you all. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.